Welcome back to Mystery Case X. This case also takes us to China. China is one of the most populated countries in the world, with one of the longest and deepest histories on Earth. Because of that, the country is home to countless ancient traditions, customs, and rituals. Some carry real cultural value. Others are so unsettling they can make your skin crawl. One of them is the old practice known as ghost marriage. Ghost marriage, sometimes called spirit marriage or netherworld marriage, is a wedding for the dead. It usually appears in two forms. In the first, a dead person is married to someone still living. In the second, two dead people are married to each other. In other words, it is a wedding where the bride or the groom no longer belongs to the world of the living. According to old accounts, this practice began very far back in Shanxi, China. Some sources say it existed as early as the Qin dynasty. Other stories trace its origin to the Three Kingdoms period. Many of you have probably heard of Cao Cao. Among Cao Cao's more than 20 children, there was one son named Cao Chong. Though he was still very young, Cao Chong was known for his extraordinary intelligence. He was said to be one of Cao Cao's most beloved sons. But Cao Chong died young in the 13th year of Jianan. He was only about 12 or 13 years old and had never married. Heartbroken, Cao Cao wanted to find a noble young lady who had also passed away and arrange a marriage for his son, hoping Cao Chong would not be lonely in the afterlife. Later, Cao Cao heard that a family named Zhen had a young daughter who had recently died. He proposed a match between her and Cao Chong. The two were buried together in the same tomb. And from that story, many people believe the custom of ghost marriage began to spread. So, why did people in the past take ghost marriage so seriously? In some traditional Chinese communities, ancestor worship carried enormous importance. Some families believed that once a daughter married, she became part of her husband's family. That meant if a young woman died before marriage, there might be no one to honor her properly after death. Out of grief and out of fear that their daughter would be lonely in the underworld, parents would try to find another spirit match for her. There were also beliefs that a young unmarried woman who died could not be buried in the ancestral graveyard. Doing so, people feared would anger the ancestors. Someone who died unmarried was also thought to become a wandering spirit, unable to rest, disturbing the living, and bringing misfortune to the family. For wealthy families, if they could not find a young dead man to marry their daughter, they might even buy a living groom. That meant purchasing a poor unmarried man to hold a wedding with the dead girl. After the ceremony, the girl's memorial tablet would be moved into the husband's family home, and from then on, his family would be responsible for incense offerings and worship. There were also cases where a living woman was married to a dead man. These women were often extremely poor, older than the typical marriage age, and unable to find a husband. Afraid of bringing shame to their parents, they agreed to marry into a family whose son had already died, then moved into that household and lived as a daughter-in-law with one chilling difference. Their husband no longer existed in this world. For men, folk belief worked in a similar way. If a man died, single people feared he would be cold and alone in the afterlife. So his family might try to buy the body of a woman, or in the most extreme cases, force a living person into that underworld marriage. They believed that if they failed to do so, the family could be cursed with bad luck, hauntings, business failure, and disaster after disaster. There was another belief tied to traditional Chinese family order. A younger brother should not marry before his older brother. So if the older brother died unmarried, the family would first arrange a ghost marriage for him. Only after that could the younger brother take a wife. They feared that if the younger brother married first, while the dead older brother had never had a bride, the older brother's spirit would grow resentful and bring ruin to the family. Another reason ghost marriage survived was the fear of a lonely grave. That meant a person being buried alone without a spouse beside them. According to superstition, a lonely grave could damage the feng shui of the entire family line and keep the family from prospering. So, how was a ghost marriage actually held? First, the family would hire a matchmaker, but this was no ordinary matchmaker. People called her a spirit matchmaker, or even a ghost matchmaker. She would go between the two families and discuss the marriage arrangement. After that, they would consult divination and choose an auspicious day. If both sides agreed the bride and groom would be prepared with wedding clothes, the ceremony would be held, and then they would be buried together or near each other. From the outside, a ghost wedding could look disturbingly similar to a normal wedding. The groom's family still prepared gifts, offerings, betel, and sarika fruit and wedding trays. Those items were real. Only the clothing, jewelry, and some belongings meant for the bride and groom were made of paper, so they could be burned afterward. As the paper offerings burned, the groom's family would stand around them beating drums, playing horns, and carrying out the spirit marriage rites. If both the bride and groom were already dead, 2 paper figures would represent them on the altar. Throughout the ceremony, those figures were treated like living people. Guests spoke to them, congratulated them, and wished them 100 years of happiness, just as they would at an ordinary wedding. The only difference was that the bride and groom were no longer alive. But there were not always 2 recently deceased unmarried people available at the same time. In many cases, one person had already been buried long ago. After the 2 families agreed to a ghost marriage, they would choose a lucky date, dig up one grave, and rebury that person beside the other. And if the ceremony involved buying a living groom for a dead girl, it became even more disturbing. The bride appeared only through a portrait. The living groom had to wear ceremonial clothes, put on black gloves instead of white ones, and hold the dead bride's photo while completing the wedding rites. Once the ghost marriage was finished, the 2 families officially treated each other as in-laws, visiting and exchanging courtesies, as if their children had married in a normal wedding. A similar custom once existed in Taiwan as well, especially during the 7th month of the lunar calendar known as Ghost Month. People said that if you were walking down the street and saw a red envelope lying on the ground, you should never casually pick it up. Some families who had lost an unmarried daughter would place a red envelope outside. Whoever picked it up was considered to have accepted a ghost marriage with the deceased girl. Many tourists did not know the story. They saw a red envelope and thought it was lucky, so they picked it up. Then the girl's family would appear and pressure them, saying that if they refused the ghost marriage, they would suffer bad luck for the rest of their lives, or even die unexpectedly. Some people also say there is a way to undo it in Taiwan. If you accidentally pick up the red envelope, you can put some money back inside and say you hope she finds someone better. Then you place the envelope back where it was. I do not know if any of you living in Taiwan have heard this story before. If you have, let me know. The ritual itself is unsettling enough, but what grew around it was far worse. To hold a ghost marriage, there had to be a body. And where did that body come from? Over time, a black market for human corpses began to form. Bodies were generally divided into two types. The first was a fresh body, someone who had died not long before. The second was a dried corpse, someone who had been dead for a long time and might have to be dug out of a grave. To get fresh bodies, some brokers even stationed themselves around hospitals. If they heard that a young woman or man was critically ill and close to death, they would notify families looking for a body for a ghost marriage. Whoever offered the highest price got the corpse. If the deal went through, the person who provided the information might receive a red envelope worth 2,000 to 3,000 yuan. If the deal failed, they could still be paid a few hundred yuan as a bribe, just so they would continue providing information next time. That alone is already horrifying, but today's case goes even darker. The main figure in this case was a man named Ma Chonghua. When he was released from prison in February 2016, he was already around 60 years old. Before that, Ma had served time for trafficking women and digging up graves to steal bodies for ghost marriages. Bodies that had just been buried would be dug up by him and his accomplices, then sold to families who wanted to hold weddings for the dead. After prison, he should have been afraid to continue. He wasn't. Ma Chonghua went right back to his old ways. Only this time he was not just stealing bodies from graves. He began targeting the living. At the time, in some remote areas of Shanxi, China, the practice of ghost marriage still existed. It was no longer open like it had once been. But in the shadows, there were still superstitious families willing to pay for a ghost bride. Ma saw an opportunity. He came up with a plan to deceive women who were ill, intellectually disabled, or otherwise vulnerable, then kill them and sell their bodies to families looking for a corpse for ghost marriage. In March 2016, just 1 month after leaving prison, Ma heard that a family in Xinmu County, Shanxi, needed a female corpse for a spirit marriage with an uncle who had recently died. The uncle had never married. His family feared that if he was buried alone, he would become a lonely grave, damaging the family's feng shui and bringing disaster to the household. Once Ma heard this, he began asking around. When he arrived in Xifeng District, Qingyang City, Gansu Province, he discovered a 45-year-old woman named Liu Taihei, who lived with her mother. Liu Taihei had an intellectual disability. Ma immediately marked her as a target. He pretended to be a matchmaker and told Liu's mother that there was a man who also had an intellectual disability and wanted to marry her daughter. To gain trust, he even paid about 2,000 yen as betrothal money. Liu's mother believed him and agreed to let him take Liu Taihei away. But on the way to the groom's home, Ma injected Liu Taihei with poison. She died right there in the vehicle. When he delivered her body, he sold it to the family for 35,000 yuan. He had spent only 2,000 yuan to lure the victim away, then sold her corpse for many times that amount. To him, a human life was just merchandise. A freshly dead body was a high-profit deal. The first crime went smoothly. No one caught him. Less than a month later, in April 2016, another family in Gansu wanted a female body to pair with a male relative who had just died. Ma contacted his accomplices again to look for a suitable woman. This time, one of them, Du Yong Hao, found a 51-year-old woman named An Furong. She also had an intellectual disability and suffered from mental illness. Du brought An Furong to Ma so he could see her in person. After looking at the victim, Ma agreed to buy her for 6,500 yuan. Then, he contacted the family that needed a body and told them he had found someone suitable. The method was the same. He put An Furong in a vehicle, drove toward the buyer's home, and injected her with poison on the way. For this deal, he expected to receive 42,000 yuan. On April 13th, Ma began transporting the body. This time, his luck ran out. The vehicle carrying him and the corpse crossed into the wrong lane, and police stopped it for inspection. The officers noticed something was wrong. They searched the car. In the trunk, they found a body. From there, Ma Chonghua's crimes began to unravel. During the investigation, he confessed not only to the killing of An Furong, but also to the earlier murder of Liu Taihe. When the case went to trial, the Supreme People's Court of China determined that Ma Chonghua had intentionally taken the lives of others, constituting the crime of intentional homicide. The court also found that he had used the custom of ghost marriage to illegally trade human bodies, deceive intellectually disabled women, poison and kill 2 victims, cause extremely serious consequences, and create a deeply harmful impact on society. For those crimes, Ma Chonghua was sentenced to death. On July 1st, 2019, he appealed, but the appeal was completely rejected. On February 8th, 2021, the death sentence was carried out. Ma Chonghua treated morality like it meant nothing. He ignored the law and crushed the lives of vulnerable people for personal profit. In the end, he paid for it. But the story does not end with one man. It leaves behind a colder question. How far can superstition go when people stop seeing the living as human? A custom that began as a way to comfort the dead became in some places a market for corpses. The fear of a lonely grave created buyers. Those buyers created brokers, and brokers like Ma Chonghua learned that a living person could be turned into a product as long as someone was willing to pay. Even today, in certain remote areas, there are still people who believe in ghost marriage. They see it as a way to bring peace to the family and comfort to the dead. But behind that so-called peace, there may be blood tears and the stolen lives of innocent people. Some old customs fade with time. Others linger in the dark, waiting for fear grief and greed to give them a reason to return. Today's story ends here. If you enjoy strange, chilling, and haunting cases like this, leave a comment and suggest the next case for me. I'll research it and tell it to you in a future video. For now, goodbye, and I'll see you again in the next mystery case.